In the final part of tonight's class, we probe deeper. Why? Why is kindness so significant? Why? What is the essence point of being selfless?
I don't know. I think it's okay. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but to say no sometimes, it's okay.
Yes, absolutely. You're right.
It's 100% okay to say no sometimes. But I liked what Dina was saying. So you could say, going back to Dina's example, Dina, you're an amazing person. You're so kind. You're so generous. You're so giving. So you need a little space, and it's annoying for you for the half an hour when you're driving to work to have someone else in the car. That's okay. You're amazing. Everyone in the whole world thinks you're amazing. And that is okay. But Dina said, no, I don't feel it's okay. I got to figure it out. I got to figure out a way to make it work for me, but also be able to be there for someone else. But 100%, a person, I do not want, the point of this is not for someone to walk away and say, oh, good, now I get to feel guilty every time I say no. You don't have to feel guilty every time you say no, but you could think like I thought it was so practical what Dina was saying. What's my issue? Why do I feel a need to say no? And can I shift that? Can I shift something in the situation, something in the expectations? Like I could say, I have a very easy time hosting people. It's an easy mitzvah for me. I no problem. But at the same time, I'm very clear. Here's my milchitz, here's my fleischiks, make yourself at home. And that's it. I'm not expecting myself to be serving anyone meals here. I mean, obviously it's family guests. I don't mean that type of guest. I mean people that just need a place to sleep in Chicago. So I can do it, but I do it in a way that works for me. Now for someone else, I wouldn't work. They don't want strangers in their house, and that's fine. You can have it as a safety issue, a security issue. So I think we all probably say no to certain things. But if we could sometimes think like Dina is like, okay, so why am I saying no? And is there a way for me to change the situation so the no could become a yes, not in a resentful way, not in a way that's going to burn me out, but in a way that's going to feel positive and growing. Anyone else have something where they saw they shifted, they had to work on themselves, but they shifted? Elisa sort of jumped ahead to something I wanted to ask, which is why are these things so important? And Elisa said, which is exactly what I was thinking, in terms of kindness, kindness is one of the straightest ways we emulate Hashem. Literally we emulate Hashem. It's actually very interesting because in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe speaks about becoming Hashem's home, that we can be God's home. And he first speaks on a deeper level of when we internalize our belief in the unity of God, we give God space inside of us, and God has a home, and that's what he wants. Why do we crave a home? Because he craves a home. He has his home inside of us, and that's very beautiful, and it's very deep, and it's a lot of work. And then the Alter Rebbe gives simpler alternatives while you're working on that harder one. And one simpler alternative is based on what it says in the Talmud, that since the destruction of the temple, God is found in Jewish law. So when you study Jewish law, when you study halacha, you're God's home, which is great because that's very doable. But then you're like, well, how many minutes a day am I going to be studying Jewish law? And then the Alter Rebbe says that a third way of becoming God's home is by giving charity. And giving charity takes hours of your day. You could say it takes me about a minute to put in that coin or write that check, swipe that card. No, it takes hours, the Alter Rebbe says, because you have all the work you need to work to create the money from which a percentage is going to charity. So if you're working 60 hours a week to create the money from which your 10, 15, 20, 25% is going to charity, all 60 hours a week, you're God's home. So why are you God's home when you give charity? Because you're emulating, because that's what God is. God is a giver. God is the ultimate giver. His whole being is kindness and doing and giving. So when we're in that space, we are, as Elisa said, in our very, very godlike space. We are emulating him. And that is a reason why this is so, it's not just, it's nice to be kind. No, this is so deeply needed. Dina?
I wanted to ask, I don't know if it's the right time, but since you brought it up, I noticed when I'm in Crown Heights and in Chabad, like Judaica stores, that they sell tzedakah boxes, like pushkas, that have a place to put a screw like into your wall.
Absolutely.
And
I have one in my kitchen, made far better than the ones you see nowadays.
Right. So
now when we got married, it's still in my kitchen, still works.
That's
the reason
amazing.
for that is because the Alter Rebbe said that every home should have a charity box built into the home, into the wall. So the very walls of your house are kindness. So it's not just a box on a table. It's now the wall of your house. The wall of your house is giving to others. And that's why we have them If you buy one, practical tip, get with 2 screws, not one, because they have with 1 screw.
Yes.
And then like they're flimsy and they can't handle the weight of your coins.
That's the mistake I made. First of all, I got it not knowing the background, but I'm like, this is so cool. I assumed it was something like that. I totally need infused giving energy in my house. Sure, why not? So for like $34.99, of course, like who wouldn't want that? Sound like a great deal. And then I like tried to screw to myself, total disaster, like not a handyman. And then the screw that I put in, it like was so flimsy. It was like, I'm like, this is not, my walls are not like this.
Right. So what you want to do is say, and I can tell you afterwards which store I know in Crown Heights sells, you want 2 screws, not 1. If someone wants to spend a lot of money and get the most gorgeous such charity box on like planet Earth, someone showed me once something online that's stunning. But if you just want the like, $40 version, just to make the walls of your house charity, they're out there, but you want to make sure you get with 2 screws because 2 screws are solid. Mine's lasted for over 30 years. But one screws, it's most of them are with 1 screw.
Can I ask, like with oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, but I just wanted to say I love that. I never heard of that before.
Yes, it's very beautiful and it's very strong to feel your home, the wall of your home is now part of charity. It's like the structure of your house is charity. That's the structure of a Jewish home. Dina, what was your other question?
Sure. I wanted to ask, okay, like I know with mezuzahs, you can't take them down and take them with you. What about with tzedakah box?
Yes, you can.
You can. Okay. Cause like, I don't want to be here
with
forever.
mezuzahs, you can, as long as so what Dina's referring to is if you have a home, an apartment, whatever, you have your mezuzahs up and you're leaving, can you take your mezuzahs with you? So if like you're selling your home to a non-Jew or the next renter is a non-Jew, you can. But if it's a Jew, you can't. But what you could do is, let's say it's a Jew, but not a religious Jew, not someone that's going to value it enough to pay you for them. What you could do is buy, as long as they're still kosher, you could buy less expensive mezuzahs and put them up and take your more expensive mezuzahs. Or if it's a Jew that has their own mezuzahs, then they could put up theirs and then give you back yours. But sometimes it's a Jew that say, I don't need these things. Like, I'm not paying you for them and I don't need them and I don't want them, and take them. And then the law is you have to keep them. But again, if you have like, mezuzahs can run from this price to this price. If you have more high-end mezuzahs, you can exchange them for ones that, as long as they're kosher, you can put up simpler ones and take yours with you. So I just want to cover these ideas because they're important in terms of practically how we can look at ourselves. So when we're kind, we are in me and God are one space. I'm God's home space. I'm emulating it, which maybe adds a depth and a significance to your kindness more than you even realize. Selfless is our work to escape the I. That's our essence struggle. That's the reason for our existence. And as Shira said very correctly, that's the core of everything else. And self-sacrifice it's not a me trip. It's not about my glorification. Self-sacrifice means it's about God. And I don't know, since of course it's late, I can't ask, but I'd like people to even think now if they've seen or been the recipient of someone embodying any of these qualities. How can you strive to be more like this yourself? And think of these qualities, especially as a mother. My mother-in-law is very selflessly kind in a very selfless way, totally not about her, totally focusing on the other person. And it was really beautiful because on Shabbos, it was this past Shabbos, I would happen to be by her, and she was sharing stories of her mother, stories I never heard, and how her mother was so selflessly kind. And I was just sitting there and imagining these like golden links. My mother-in-law's mother, her selfless kindness, then my mother-in-law, her selfless kindness. I was sort of hoping this is extending to my children. So this is really, as mothers, something really significant for us to think about as mothers. How do we help our children grow in this regard? Especially because we live in a super saturated with self-centered entitlement world. We live in a world where children growing up the opposite of these traits, not in our home perhaps, but in the world around them. And just focusing on modeling. Our actions are much louder than anything we're ever going to say and anything we're ever going to lecture. But just like I'm thinking, how did my mother-in-law become the woman she is? Well, this was the mother she had. So Now, again, you can think yourself. And for some of you, you can be like, no, I'm nothing like my mother, and I try to give in a way my mother didn't. For some of you can think, no, yeah, I do naturally give. It is easy for me to give, and I was raised in that way. So it's so amazingly important as we model this and talk, not talking in a way of criticizing, obviously, not lecturing, but sharing how you feel when you're able to give to someone else, sharing how that nurtures and feeds you, sharing how that's the highlight of your day, sharing stories of people with their selfless kindness and self-sacrifice. It should be like in the air, because there's so much in our world that's giving our children very different messages. But these are our kids, they're Jews. Like it or not, if we do the right things or not, their nature is to be givers. Every one of our children's nature is to be a giver, despite the self-centered, entitled world they live in. But there are things we can do to help. Anyone else, just very quickly, because I think this is so important, have tips or ideas or what they've seen with their children in terms of helping lead them in this direction, to be less self-centered, to be other-centered, to be a giver, to get out of that entitlement space?
We always, when we have people knock on our door, like Mishulachim, to come collect, it's very important to us to like invite them in and let them sit down, make them a tea, give them a banana, everything. And it's so cute because we now see it with our kids. When they come, I don't say anything, and my 2.5-year-old runs with a bottle of water and a banana. And I always think that's so nice.
It's beautiful. And you know exactly where she's getting it from.
But I do have a question on that, because I wanted to ask you guys. So it's very important to me, and I always do, and have whenever someone comes to the door, I always like to, give them right away and invite them in, and I never say no. But last night my husband wasn't home, and I was in the middle of doing bedtime, and it took a very long time, and I was in the middle of putting my 2.5-year-old down, and a Michelle came to the door, and I knew that if I would go to the door, then it would just be like another 35 minutes of like getting my 2.5-year-old back upstairs and everything. I told the Michelle, I asked my son to ask the Michelle if he could come back in a half hour. And I feel really guilty about it. I feel like that was the wrong thing to do. I wanted your opinion.
Well,
I'll give you my opinion. Your kids come first.
okay, you got Shira's opinion. Your kids come first. All right. My question is, and sometimes we get into this trap. So Yehudit invites them in and makes a tea and gives them bananas and talks to them and asks them how's it going, and she gives them some emotional and moral support, and it's a 35-minute situation. What if you had just
takes 5 minutes. It's not a long time. It just, it's just more, it takes 2 seconds.
What if you had just taken a bill out of your pocketbook and given it to your child to give to the guy?
Because I was upstairs, I have to write a check that was downstairs. It was just, it was that, like I was thinking, okay, maybe I should just have like checks written, and then my kids could just give it when I'm not available or something.
I don't want to say that it was wrong, because I mean, honestly, some women wouldn't open up their door at night if their husband's not home. And if a woman tells me that, I would totally respect it. If a woman says, I don't feel safe and I don't open up my door to Mishalach when my husband's not home, I could hear that. I don't have that hang up, that fear, but we live in this world. I could totally respect if someone does. And I wouldn't say they're being wrong at all. So I agree with Shira. I wouldn't say you're wrong if you're like, oh my gosh, I know what's going to happen in my 35 minutes. I think if I was sort of in that situation, I probably would have just told the child that was old enough to go to the door, tell the Michelle to come back in half an hour. I would have probably said, just bring me up my pocketbook. And I would have scribbled a check if you're writing a check and sent it down with them. Something else you could do is just give some money, which maybe would be less than the check. But at the moment, it's probably easier for the guy than coming back. And you don't want to feel like I turned someone away. By the same token, and I would say that for everyone, sometimes people come and people don't feel bad because I don't have the amount of money I usually give them, or the amount of money I like to give to Mishalachim. And I think just give anything. Again, we want to be hands that are natural givers. And for a hand to be a natural giver, you could say, I have $1, I have $2. Great, we'll give $2.
Okay.
No, you don't have to feel bad, but I always give it 10, I always give it 5, I always give it 20. It's okay that you gave $2. You gave, someone asked and you gave. And that's all. That's all. Again, people could disagree with me on that. But I think someone's coming and asking, at the moment, I want to grab $1 out of my purse, I want to send it with my child. I gave. You want to say to the Michelle, and if you want, you can come back for something more later. And you can do that too. But if you just, because I feel like you feel guilty for turning someone away. You feel bad, like I'm turning someone away, like in a cold Chicago winter. I said to come back. Well, it's November, but okay. But at the same time, as long as you gave, you gave. And then the amount, I don't think we have to worry about the amount. We just want to be givers. I don't think it makes a difference here. Dina?
So something that I grew up with and I see myself being so natural at is my parents, and I don't know if this was like right or wrong. I don't think they had like the parenting research they do now, but my parents were like open about Meiser each month, and they were like, and tzedakah, and whether they had like no money that month because they had their own business or a lot of money that month, it was like they were so honest with us about what they have and how much we need to give from that. And if they were like, and if some big expense was coming up, they're like, hey, we got to give more Meiser. Where should we give? And they like, even though they didn't really like, I don't think they took our opinions, like they didn't let us make those decisions. They really included us in those decisions. And it would be like a common dinner table topic. Like, oh, we need more money for this summer. We want to go to expensive camp. We got to give more Meiser, you know, like what are we going to give to? What do you think? So I see that now, like it's an open conversation with me and I just don't care. I'm like, yeah, whatever, take it. It's all good.
That's wonderful. So what Dina's saying is her parents spoke to them about, oh, this is the money we, again, I don't know if you do or don't want to get into your financial details with your children, but still at least the idea of like, yeah, you know, we have expenses and maybe we think we need this money, but it's not our money. It's God's money. It's Hashem's money. It's tzedakah, and we're giving it away. And we know Hashem will give us more. And no, right now we can't do that. But don't worry, we're giving tzedakah. We're going to get back loads. We'll be able to afford it. We just got to give more tzedakah. Great conversations. Eliza?
Just going back to the bedtime and the tzedakah, I think what you just said, that it's not our money, but the money is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To me, I mean, I'm one who, if it's nighttime and my husband's not home, it happens. I'm just not comfortable. However, when he is home or when I was in my parents' house, you know, like either way and could open the door, my attitude was always, I'm giving whatever I have available at that moment. And I never want to ask someone to come back because I feel like there's a certain kavod I want to give them, and it must be so uncomfortable to have to ask. So I don't want them to have to come back. So whatever I have, that's what they're getting from me, but whatever they need, they will get. It could be from the next person or from two people down, but either way, Hashem's going to make sure that they have.
That's beautiful. And you're right, it is uncomfortable. I have had over the years many Mishalachim sleep at my house. I don't know, I think at one point it was somehow going around, I guess the Mishlachims, I don't know. I don't think they had WhatsApp groups in those days, but whatever. And I remember more than once I had a woman. I always felt bad, a woman has to go around collecting. And I remember once there was a woman and she's a collector and this is what she does. And, you know, she seemed all like cool with it, if you want to use that term. And I guess it was Shabbos. And I was talking to her and she literally started crying to me. And she broke down and she wasn't doing it to get money from me. She was crying to me about how embarrassed she is and how painful this is and how difficult this is. But it was like a breakdown moment because like she wasn't acting like that during the week when she was going around, but inside, of course, that's how she felt. And I think what Elisa's saying is a great point for us to think about. Like, you know, I'm not saying every man feels that way. Probably every woman for sure does, but it, on a certain level, must be degrading. And especially if you're like collecting for yourself, collecting for your children, you know, it must feel very bad that you need to collect money to support yourself or your children, or you're making weddings or medical bills or whatever it is people are collecting for. And with that extra sensitivity, which I think goes back to Yehudit's cup of tea and banana. And I also always offer, can I give you something to eat? Okay, you're in a rush. Can I just give you a water bottle? Can I give you some cake or fruit for the way? 90% of the people tell me no, and 10% are so grateful. Every once in a while, someone will actually sit down. I guess Yehudit has a better touch than me. Most people aren't going to sit down and drink that tea. They want to go on to the next one. But very rarely someone will. Last time I remember it was a woman. And I always feel very special that if I could do that for someone. And again, that's just us. That's just Jews. We feel good when we can give. Sorry we went over time. And of course, we didn't do everything I wanted to do anyway. But just food for thought, these traits, how they're inside of us, how we can bring them out even more, and how we can help our children acquire them as well. Thank you so much for joining. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
As we live with the times. This is living with the times, ladies.
Too.
Thank
Summer.
you.